Sarabi was one of the most underrated and underused characters in the entire Lion King franchise. Yet people are able to make videos about her, ranging from life stories to what happened when Mufasa died and when Scar took over as king. But one thing that has occurred to me, and a question I have asked before, is why Sarabi didn't become the reigning queen after Mufasa and Simba's apparent death. Now, to most people, this is obvious. They thought that Scar was the rightful king because he was next in line to receive the throne after Mufasa and Simba, and they didn't know that Scar had killed Mufasa. And I'm just going to say right now, none of these videos, none of these pictures belong to me. None of these photos, they all belong to their respective artists. I do not claim ownership of the Lion King or any fan art whatsoever. If I do use fan art in this video, I will leave the link to the owners in the description box below. But yeah, that having been said, let's get into this video. So basically, I always wondered how the movie would have turned out if instead of Scar ruling over the Pridelands as king, Sarabi would have taken lead. After all, she was the leader of the huntresses, but not only that, her whole world collapsed and crumbled around her as we see in the original Lion King film. She believes that Mufasa and Simba have both perished in the stampede in the gorge, and if you watch Zazu try and comfort her, it's just really heartbreaking. Which brings me back to my original point. Yes, they did assume that Scar would have been the only suitable king because he was second in line after Simba. Keeping that in mind. But when Scar did rule the Pridelands, the drought hit, the herds were being overhunted, and this is touched upon briefly in the 2019 live-action adaptation of The Lion King. Nobody brings up in the universe or even much on the internet is the fact that Sarabi could have led as queen and would have done a much better job taking care of her subjects than Scar had. He was literally allowing the hyenas to overhunt in the Pridelands and overpopulate. If you've seen how big Shenzi's hyena clan is, you get what I mean. This would be the time when Nala was still a cub, and Serafina, Sarabi's best friend and Nala's mom, would be at her side. What if the lionesses, in seeing how bad Scar's rule and how intolerable it had gotten, decided to voice their concerns and make Sarabi their queen? To be fair, I don't think that they would have been able to do this without overthrowing Scar, and like I mentioned before, there's the whole hyena army he had, and they would have been vastly outnumbered. Isaac Carlson talks about this in one of his videos, why the hyenas had his back, why the lionesses didn't just attack Scar until Simba returns to Pride Rock, and Scar admits that he's the one who killed Mufasa in the gorge. And then they're through, despite the odds being against them. But what if the lionesses had made a secret alliance to dethrone Scar? Several of the lionesses coming together. Would the hyenas have known what was up? Would they have been spying on them? Trying to gather information, perhaps for Scar to use to dissuade the lionesses from turning against him? This is one interesting point that nobody ever really seems to bring up. I haven't seen videos about this, and it's kind of sad to see that there aren't many videos talking about Sarabi in general, for two reasons. Mainly because she's such an underrated character, but also because there are so few scenes of her in the movie. We literally only see her at the beginning, and when Simba returns to Pride Rock as an adult, we also get to see her, but the majority of the film focuses on characters such as Simba, Scar, Timon, Pumbaa, Mufasa, and even Rafiki all have more scenes than her. And Simba and Nala have their whole love story going on, obviously. But this goes back to my question, what if they turned against Scar? And the lionesses formed a group, and they attacked him. Truthfully, I don't think they would stand much of a chance without any other male lions around. Scar and his hyenas would have attacked them until they either had to run away or were killed. So that was probably the reason that they thought it was not best to do that. But the moment Scar actually is forced to admit from Simba that he killed Mufasa, they charge towards him, not caring about the hyenas, and the whole war for the battle for Pride Rock ensues. Would any of this have happened if they had considered Sarabi to be the queen? Sure, maybe there would have been a battle between the hyenas and the lionesses, and we could have seen this ideally between the time Simba is found by Timon and Pumbaa as a cub, after the whole Hakuna Matata sequence, and before he returns as an adult lion to Pride Rock. And maybe we could have even seen Scar ask Sarabi to be his queen, like in this video here. And this was actually a thing in the live-action version. There was a scene where Scar asks Sarabi to be his queen, and then when she refuses, he punishes her by not allowing the hyenas, or not allowing the lionesses and the lions of Pride Rock to eat before the hyenas. So they were forced to eat after the hyenas. What if Sarabi, for the best interest of her pride, pretended to be Scar's queen in order to feed her people? Again, this goes back to what I said about Sarabi taking care of the subjects and ruling the land. And she would basically be suffering and putting herself through said suffering for the good of her pride. And it would be really awesome to see, because not only would it give Sarabi more scenes in general in this movie, but it would also show how savage she was, what a fearless queen to Mufasa she was. Her ultimate character was put to the test, but we didn't get to see nearly enough of it. Also, I have read online that the reason Sarabi does not appear in the sequel is that her voice actress Madge Sinclair, I may not be pronouncing the name right, sadly passed away sometime before the second film. As for Sarabi's character, that sort of forced people to come up with ideas and theories of their own. Everything ranging from Zira and Sarabi fighting each other, to Sarabi defending her grandson Kopa, to Sarabi just dying of old age on Pride Rock, which Isaac Carlson also talks about in one of his videos. What if Sarabi had found out that Scar had sent the hyenas to try and kill Simba? Maybe the hyenas, on part of a mistake, say this, and Sarabi manages to overhear this, and she would tell the other lionesses, and Scar's treacherous ways and treachery would have been experienced by them, would have been exposed by them much sooner. I think Scar personally would have attacked Sarabi, like we see in the 2019 remake, where she refuses to be his queen and announces that he is nothing compared to Mufasa, which enrages him. But I truly think that the better option would have been Sarabi, because the lands would have not have been overhunted by the hyenas. Scar would not be in charge and forcing the pridelanders to stay in one certain area. If you remember in the film, Sarabi says to Scar there's no food left, and she's the one who wants to leave and move the pride to a different region or ecosystem to look for food. I believe that she would have done that, and she was only held back. The only reason she and the other lionesses were held back were because of Scar and his hyenas. To conclude this video, I love Sarabi. I love her character. It's such a shame that we don't get to see her more in the film. But to be brutally honest, it would have made a huge impact had we seen her react more like this throughout the movie. We could still have the adventures with Simba, but it would give Sarabi more character, in-depth character traits, and just more character in general. Scar and Sarabi didn't take down Scar with the lionesses because the hyenas and Scar would have fought them to the death had they tried.